Something is wrong.
Hold on to us, always.
Letters.
I will not let them scare us away.
Tell your husband, no more rubbish.
I went there once. What if it was her daughter?
No! No, 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 no!
For 10 years we watched Claire and Jamie fight for each other across centuries, across war, across time itself. And just when we thought we had seen everything this show could possibly throw at us, the finale came along and completely broke us in the best way possible. But here is the thing that is still keeping me up at night. Jamie's ghost. That mystery has haunted this entire show since the very first season, and the finale finally gave us the answer we had been waiting for. But the answer itself raised even more questions that I genuinely cannot stop thinking about. And on top of all of that, the way the finale connects to Blood of My Blood is something that almost nobody is talking about yet. So today we are going to break down every single important moment from the Outlander Season 8 finale, solve the ghost mystery once and for all, and then look at what it all means for what is coming next. Trust me, by the end of this, you are going to see the finale in a completely different way. Let me just start by saying that I honestly did not expect to feel this emotional about a finale. I have watched a lot of television. I have seen a lot of series endings. But the Outlander Season 8 finale did something that very few finales actually managed to do, which is make you feel like every single hour you invested in this story was completely worth it. And that is not easy to pull off after 10 years and 8 seasons. So before we get into the ghost mystery and the Blood of My Blood connections, I want to take us through the finale moment by moment, because every scene matters, and every detail connects to something bigger. Season 8 was almost entirely structured around one thing, and that was Jamie Fraser preparing for his fate at the Battle of King's Mountain. From the very first episode of this final season, we knew where things were heading. Frank's book had already told us. The history books had already told us. Jamie Fraser was supposed to die at the Battle of King's Mountain, and the entire season built toward that moment with such incredible weight and patience that by the time we reached episode 10, the tension was almost unbearable to sit through. Every episode leading up to the battle felt like a slow goodbye. Every conversation Jamie had with the people he loved felt like a last conversation. And the show knew exactly what it was doing with that feeling. It was letting us grieve before the death even happened, which made everything that followed even more emotionally devastating. And then episode 10 arrived. The battle episode. And I want to talk about the farewell scenes first because honestly, the battle itself was not the most emotional part of that episode. The most emotional part was everything that happened before Jamie stepped onto that battlefield. The way Jamie said goodbye to his family was written and performed with such genuine heartbreak that I found myself pausing the episode multiple times just to catch my breath. There is something about watching a man who has survived so much, who has fought through literal centuries of danger and loss, come to terms with the idea that this might be his last morning, his last breakfast, his last conversation with the people who mean everything to him. That is what the farewell scenes captured. Not heroism, not bravery in a dramatic sense, just a man deeply in love with his family, doing his best to hold himself together while saying things he hopes they will carry with them forever. The words Jamie said to each member of his family in those final moments were genuinely beautiful, and I do not use that word lightly. There was such specificity to each goodbye, such personality in what he chose to say to each person. He did not give some grand speech that felt written for an audience. He spoke to each of them the way you speak to someone when you are terrified you might never see them again but you do not want them to see how terrified you are. That restraint made it so much more powerful than any dramatic monologue could have been. But the goodbye that absolutely destroyed me was the one between Jamie and Brianna. I need to talk about this scene because it was unlike anything I have ever seen on this show. Bri has always had this incredibly complicated relationship with Jamie, because she only found him as an adult, because she grew up with a father who was not her biological father, because their entire bond was built on time they almost did not get to have together. And in that farewell scene, all of that complexity was present in every look, every word, every moment of silence between them. Jamie and Bri both knew what was coming. Neither of them said it directly, but you could feel it in everything. And by the time they finally embraced, I was just as wrecked as they were. That scene alone was worth the entire season. And then came the battle itself. And I want to be honest with you here, the battle was extraordinary from a technical standpoint. The sounds, the chaos, the complete unpredictability of every moment. My heart was jumping with every gunshot the same way Claire's was. Because even though we thought we knew how this was supposed to end, The show started making us believe that maybe it would not end that way. Jamie was surviving everything. Every attack that came at him he met and overcame. The British were retreating. And for one incredible breathless moment, I genuinely believed that what was written in Frank's book was a lie. A deliberate, protective lie written to keep Jamie safe by making the world believe he was already gone. And if you think about it, that theory made complete sense. Frank was a historian. Frank loved Claire. If he found evidence that Jamie survived, he might have buried it to protect both of them from anyone who might use that information. But then it happened. Jamie had survived the battle. The British had retreated. He was walking through the aftermath, moving past the captured British soldiers, and a single shot rang out. A treacherous shot from a soldier who refused to accept that the fight was over. And Jamie Fraser, who had survived a red coat ambush, a shipwreck, imprisonment, torture and travel through time itself, died from a bullet fired by a coward who could not let it go. He died in Claire's arms. And Claire's cries in that moment were some of the most raw, genuinely devastating sounds I have ever heard on television. I am not exaggerating when I say that scene gave me chills that I still feel when I think about it. There was nothing cinematic about her grief. It was not beautiful grief. It was the kind of grief that is ugly and desperate and completely real. And it made Jamie's death feel more permanent and more painful than anything the show had ever done before. And what happened next was equally devastating in a quieter way. Claire stayed by Jamie's side even after his death. Day and night. She would not leave him. She could not leave him. And for anyone who has ever loved someone that completely, that image of her staying there, refusing to let the world move on without him, was something that hit in a way that is very hard to put into words. That is real love. Not the kind that looks good in a montage. The kind that refuses to accept that it has to end. Now, let us talk about the ghost. Because this is where the finale became something more than just an emotional farewell. This is where Outlander proved that it had been playing a longer game than almost anyone realized. Jamie's ghost has been part of this story since the very beginning. In the first season, a British officer saw a ghost outside Claire's window. A ghost that looked like a Highlander. A ghost that was watching Claire with an intensity that made it clear this was not a random spirit. And for years, that image sat in the back of every fan's mind as one of the great unanswered questions of the show. Who was that ghost? What did it mean? Was Jamie somehow able to reach across time and death to watch over Claire? The finale answered all of that. And the answer was at once incredibly simple and incredibly moving. The ghost we saw in the first season was Jamie. The Jamie who died at the Battle of King's Mountain. His ghost came back one final time to see Claire. To look at her one last time. To make sure she was still there. Still breathing. Still carrying forward the love that had defined both of their lives. And that is all it was. Not a paradox. Not a complicated piece of time travel mythology. Just a man so deeply in love that even death could not fully take him away from the woman he loved. But then the finale gave us something more with the ghost, and this is the part that I cannot stop thinking about. We watched Jamie's ghost travel to Craig na Dun, to the Standing Stones, and we watched him touch one of the stones. And when he touched it, blue flowers bloomed beneath the stone. Right there, in that moment, I felt the question rise up immediately. Was Jamie a time traveler? Had the show been hiding something about him all along? But when I sat with it, I do not think that is what the show was telling us. Jamie was not a time traveler in the conventional sense. He never passed through the stones while he was alive. We saw Claire's hair turn completely white. And if you remember the prophecy from the Native American shaman Neawen, you know exactly what that means. Neawen told Claire years ago that when her hair turned white, her healing power would reach its absolute maximum. She said it would happen, and she said it would be significant. And in the finale it was. Because with her hair completely white and her power at its peak, Claire brought Jamie back to life. I want to just sit with that for a second because the show did not do this cheaply. This was not a quick resurrection that felt unearned. The entire final season was building toward this, threading in the prophecy, establishing Claire's healing gifts, showing us the limits of those gifts, and how they had grown over the years. By the time we saw her hair turn white, we understood what it cost, what it meant, and what it would make possible. And when Jamie came back, it felt like the show had kept a promise it made all the way back in the early seasons, that these two people were meant to find each other, meant to hold on to each other, and that the universe itself had conspired to make sure they got to stay together. I honestly could not imagine a more perfect ending than that. It was emotional without being manipulative. It was hopeful without being naive. And it was true to who Claire and Jamie are. Because of course Claire would not give up. Of course she would find a way. She always finds a way. That is who she is. Now, I know some people might have wanted to see Claire and Jamie living out their days happily together after that resurrection. I wanted that too, if I am being completely honest. I would have loved to see them settled and peaceful and surrounded by their family, watching the world they helped build continue on without them having to fight for it anymore. But the fact that the show did not give us those scenes, that it ended right at the moment of resurrection rather than showing us the life that followed, I think that was a deliberate choice. And I think it was made with Blood of My Blood in mind. So let us talk about Blood of My Blood, because the connection between the Outlander finale and that prequel series is something that has been quietly set up for longer than most people realize. And now that we know Jamie is alive and the show has ended where it ended, the possibilities for what Blood of My Blood Season 2 could do are genuinely exciting. First, let us remember where Blood of My Blood Season 1 ended. Henry and Julia went to the Stones. They were trying to return to their own time, which means they were trying to get to Claire's time. And Archibald and his men were right behind them, closing in fast, just as they were about to step through the Stones. And then the show left us there. We never fully saw whether they made it through or not. The Season 2 teaser did not resolve it either, which means that ambiguity is intentional, and it is going to be a central question of everything that follows. My first theory is that they did not both make it through. I think the show is going to split them up. And my instinct says that Julia is the one who made it through the Stones while Henry did not. Now here is where it gets interesting. Julia does not fully understand how time travel works. She knows the stones exist, she knows they move people through time, but the mechanics, the rules, the way the gems interact with the travel, she does not have the same knowledge that Claire had when she first came through. Which means Julia would almost certainly not arrive in her intended destination. She would not arrive in Claire's present. She would arrive somewhere else in time, or possibly in a version of the past that she is not prepared for. And my strong feeling is that the first person Julia would encounter after coming through the stones would be Fanny. We saw Fanny find that gemstone, and I said at the time that the show did not put that detail in for nothing. Fanny finding that gemstone was set up for something significant, and I believe that something is Fanny using it to travel, or being at the stones at exactly the right moment to encounter Julia when she comes through. The meeting between Fanny and Julia would be extraordinary on its own, because Fanny has her own complicated connection to Claire, and once she and Julia started piecing together their shared connections, the eventual reunion between Julia and Claire would become inevitable. And that reunion, Claire meeting her own mother again after everything that has happened, after all the time that has passed, after all the grief and the loss, that scene is something I am already emotional just thinking about. Claire deserves that reunion. She really does. But I do not think the reunion would last long because Julia would need to go back. Henry is still in the Blood of My Blood timeline. Their son William is still there. Julia cannot simply stay in Claire's time and leave them behind, which means we would very quickly move into a rescue mission. And here is where I think Roger enters the picture in a major way. Roger would not let Julia go back through the stones alone. Roger understands time travel better than almost anyone in this world. He has lived through the dangers of it, he has lost years to it, and he would know that Julia cannot do this by herself. I think we are going to see Roger become a major part of the Blood of My Blood cast for Season 2, helping Julia navigate the timeline, helping her find Henry and William, and helping her get them all back safely. That would be an incredible use of Roger's character, and it would connect the Outlander finale to Blood of My Blood, in a way that feels genuinely earned rather than just fan service. My second theory is darker, and honestly I think it might be even more likely than the first one. What if neither Henry nor Julia made it through the stones? What if Archibald and his men caught them before they could travel? That would mean they are both still in the Blood of My Blood timeline, captured in real danger, and with no immediate way out. And in that scenario, the gemstone that Fanny found becomes even more important. Because if Claire and Jamie, now reunited in the Outlander timeline, become aware of what happened to Henry and Julia, and if Fanny is the one with the gemstone and the courage to use it, we could see Fanny traveling into the Blood of My Blood timeline to help rescue them. That would be an extraordinary story. A young woman with no real understanding of the rules of time travel, stepping through the stones to help people she cares about, landing in a past she is not prepared for, and having to figure it out on her feet. I find this theory just as compelling as the first one, and I genuinely believe the Fanny gemstone storyline is going to pay off in a huge way in season 2. The show does not put details like that on screen without a purpose. It never has. And regardless of which theory turns out to be correct, I think both of them lead to the same place. Fanny time traveling. That is the through line in both scenarios. Fanny ends up in a different time than where she started, and her journey in that different time becomes one of the central stories of Blood of My Blood season 2. I am